Okay, good morning. Okay. Hi. So you guys are second years, yes?
Yeah.
All right. So I understand that there's going to be like a rotation. So every week there's going to be a new bunch. Maximum of like what, are 25 people? 30? 30, okay. All right, so it's unfortunate that we're going to have to do this like hybrid. I would have preferred that we do it like in person because as you see, as the course goes on, a lot of it is really interactive. So I don't know the people at home, how they're going to ask questions. Like they're going to be raising their hands.
Okay, doctor, they can unmute themselves and also you can check the chat.
Okay. So I guess we'll leave that to the end. Like, so if they have questions, anybody, they can try to answer it towards the end. Okay. So this is, I believe it's 17 weeks, maybe 16, I'm not sure. You're going to have a midterm exam and you're going to have a final exam. Okay. And it's all going to be MCQs. It's a very interesting course if you pay attention, if you, attend. You study the PowerPoints. There's going to be PDFs that we will upload for every lecture. There are going to be times when I'm going to make a reference that you need to go back to the PDF for a particular table or something. So I will let you know. You don't have to study the PDFs because it's a lot. Like it's not from one source. There's multiple sources. So I've just put them all together. Unless you have a particular interest in this area, then yes, go and buy a book. But otherwise, there's just a lot of references. So we've made it easier. So it's all going to be uploaded on Moodle. Okay. So let me start from the beginning. My name is Dr. Nihal. I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I'm the chairperson of mental health at King Fahd Medical City. I'm part of the National Neuroscience Institute. And there are like 7 departments in the National Neuroscience Institute. And most people I've taught over the years develop an interest not in behavioral or child psychiatry. Most people want to be neurosurgeons or neurologists, okay? But it's, again, all in the area of the brain, so I'm still okay with that. Is anybody interested in psychiatry at all? Okay, it's nice to see some hands, okay. Before, like you just had an interest like all along wanting to kind of, do psychiatry, or still, again, it's still an area of investigation, I guess, because it's as you go along in medical school, you may encounter things that you like more. But usually those who really want to do psych from the very beginning end up doing psych. I wanted to do psych before I entered medical school, so I ended up doing psych. But I did child psychiatry, which is a subspecialty. And so there's so many subspecialties in psychiatry. But this course is not about illness, it's about health. So over the next 16 weeks, I'm going to sort of take you through the normal development of mental health.
Doctor, the mic is here, so if you could
stand here. Okay. All right, so over the course, we're going to learn about like the normal development. So from prenatally all the way to being a child, being a young adult, being an older adult, being an elderly person, and then death. So walk you through all that. And then we'll do certain like, isolated things also related to behavior and normal development. And why is it that we need to learn about normal? Why do we have to know what's normal? It's a lot more fun knowing what's abnormal, but why do we need to know what is normal? Yeah. Yeah, so you need to have a baseline, okay? So if a family brings in their child who's started walking at the age of 4, how would you know if that's normal or abnormal if you don't know that, kids should be walking by the age of 1, okay? So milestones in this course are really important. When do kids do whatever it is that they have to do, whether it's a motor milestone, an emotional, a social, a cognitive. So it's really important. So you'll find in the next few lectures, there's going to be so many dates, like, ages. So if you don't study as we go along, trust me, time exam comes, you will be very confused. So I'm giving you an advice from the very beginning. So as we go along, do study, because what happens is people kind of put behavioral science, because it's a parallel course, put it on the side, because now I think you're doing neuro, which is really tough. but then you get caught up with neuro, and then, oh my God, exam is like next week, and then you're like, how do I arrange these dates? Okay. So from the very beginning, it's a lot simpler. Okay, and like I said, just if you're attentive in the lectures, you'll do really fine. Okay, so there are multiple choice questions for your midterm and your final. Usually also what I do is I give a project, second term, and it's a written project, individual, so it's not like a group thing. And it's really made to help you, push up your grades. Okay, so it's actually a bonus to do. But anyways, we'll get to that when we get to it. Okay. All right.
Right or fresh.
Thanks. What is your name?
That's Umaya. Umaya.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's just a little bit about me. So I've been the chairperson, I think, for the past 6 years. So what's really amazing about neuroscience is like we all work together to figure out what's wrong with a person's like brain when it comes to structure or function. So those who work with structure are like the neurologists and neurosurgeons. We look at function from a mental health perspective. So in the Department of Mental Health, there's psychiatrists and there's psychologists. And they're different because psychologists are not physicians, okay? But they're so important as part of the team because they help a lot in diagnosis. So if I'm seeing a child, because I work with kids and adolescents, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this child in terms of, behavioral changes, school issues. So the psychologist kind of helps me map the actual function of this child. So then I can have a better sense of, how I can direct parents in terms of learning, in terms of understanding behavior. So yesterday I saw this really interesting 6-year-old girl, okay? So she's the second in a sibship of 3, she's the second child. And parents are physicians, it's a very, seemingly normal family. But since this girl was 4, she has these episodes of crying, so low mood. So every few months she has a week or 2 where she's just tearful, sad, doesn't really eat, not really interested in anything, just sitting on the couch, headaches, tummy aches. And it lasts for about a week or 2, and then she kind of goes back to her baseline and, normally functions. So it's interesting because we don't really see depression at that age. It's not a common age for seeing, a mood disorder. Mood disorders we see more in, older kids, maybe teens. So what is something that you would want to think about? If you have a child who's seemingly normal, what would you like to do for this child? That I did, I don't know. Would you want to investigate anything? So you think about like what's going on at home, so whether it's emotional, whether it's whatever. So that's something that's on my mind. We look at school environment, and unfortunately with this COVID situation, it's a good point because actually this girl's really sad. One of the reasons why she's sad is because she's not seeing friends. So she's really feeling very isolated. So school, because school is a really essential part of kids' development. And then I'm thinking about hormones, so you look at medical. So when you work with kids and teens, it's really important to look at the medical part of things, because a lot of times medical conditions can present with behavioral changes or psychiatric symptoms. So this was my first encounter with her yesterday. So I'll update you guys as to what comes out of that as we go along. Okay, so this is kind of how it seems when I say like behavioral science. People are like confused because this is not anatomy, this is not physiology, it's not biochemistry. So this is something that's a bit different, but it will get much better and a lot easier. Okay, so we're going to start from prenatal development. Now you guys did embryology, right? Was it last year or are you doing it this year? Last year. And how easy was that for you or hard? Who liked embryology? I didn't particularly like it in medical school. I found it really difficult to imagine. But again, it's the basis of everything, okay? when we look at behavior, we look at nature and nurture. What does that mean? What is nature? What is nurture? What is the difference? Okay.
Nature is something we're born with, so our nature. Nurture is how we were born to think or deal with different things. So the environment is what nurture does.
Okay.
But our nature is something we're born with.
So like your genetics. Okay. So genetics versus environment, and what goes into your environment? What is the environment of a human being?
Family,
So family, friends, diet, pollution, politics, war. So all of that is your environment. So you can have people who are like monozygotic twins, so they're coming with the same identical genetic makeup. You separate them and you put them in completely different environments. This always happens. Can you guys hear me at the end? It's okay? All right, I'll try. So if you raise them in completely different environments, do you have similar outcomes or different outcomes? You expect to have different outcomes depending on the environment and the nurture. Okay, so in the next few lectures, we'll see in terms of nurture, we'll talk a lot about parenting, because that's really your first encounter, is your mom or whoever is your primary caretaker. And you'll realize that that initial sort of exposure really shapes a lot of who you become later in life. That's one way of looking at it, because that was your first, let's say, prototype. That was your first example of any kind of interpersonal relationship that you will have ever in life, okay? So we look at development. Is it something that's continuous or it's not continuous? So it's something that's continuous. So we may not continue to grow in size, but your abilities will continue to kind of change, right? So again, yesterday I saw a child with an intelligence that's really quite far from the normal. Okay, so she's a child with moderate intellectual disability, and that's something we're going to talk about in terms of what number indicates moderate. But in any case, she's really quite far from what is normal. Okay, so yesterday we were really trying to, like, let's say, break the bad news to her mother that this is a child who's going to have a lot of struggles in life. She's a 7-year-old child. So again, so dealing with breaking the bad news, but also what this mother was saying is that she felt like just with changing some things in this child environment, so changing the nanny, that the mother started to pay more attention to this girl. She said that in the past 6 months, she actually noticed a difference in this girl's outlook on so many things. So she was a girl who was very anxious, was very fearful. So that's an example of how you can change simple things in an environment, and it really helps in improving outcome, particularly with kids. Like you can do so little and it makes a huge difference. Now, it's not going to make a difference in this kid's intellectual disability, because they will always have academic struggles, but it may make a difference in their social outlook, as well as if they're anxious or not. Okay, so environment is really essential. All right, so I'm not gonna ask you this in your exam. I'm sure you had enough of this in your embryology, but again, you have your germinal period, your embryonic period, and your fetal period, okay? So generally things start up, down, right? So the brain starts and then it kind of goes down. Obviously, from a very basic concept to something that's a lot more complex, okay? And then in order of importance. So what does that mean when you say development is in the order of importance? Okay, so our legs are important, or like our extremities are less important, or how does it work? I mean, they are, because there's a lot more happening central, like the brain and sort of central organs. So again, more complex takes more time, and so then your limbs, come along. Okay, so brain development starts 18 days after fertilization, and it's obviously one of the very slow organs to develop because it's super complex. okay? And then brain to body size obviously changes. And why is that? Why does the brain to body, I mean, like if you ever see a fetus, it's mainly head, tiny body, and then as it grows, that starts to proportionate. So so there's that part, but also what happens is pruning, okay? So cells are made and then they're sort of pruned, and so you kind of come out with what you need to have for the rest of your life, okay? So again, neural plate, you all know that, neural tube, and that closes by 4 weeks, okay? And it's the walls of the neural tube that will give rise to all the neurons and glial cells, okay? So our sort of focus is the forebrain, okay? That's kind of like the cortex. So a lot of behavioral problems are in the frontal lobe area, okay? And then when you take psychiatry later on, you will see that just a lot of your behaviors are governed by your sort of frontal part of your brain, so the cortex. Not the best diagram, I'm sure you guys have seen better ones, okay? But generally, a very complicated organ. And that's why I think people who end up doing neuroscience, I mean, I don't know, I just feel it's a lot more interesting, I think, than the other organs. I mean, I'll always talk about the brain, but the complexity, I think, is what is very interesting. Okay, so the hindbrain and the brainstem develop first, okay? Then you have your midbrain, then you have your cortex, okay? And then you have your gray and white cortex, gray matter. So in this area, you can have so many, let's say, syndromes that you will then study in pediatrics because of migrational problems. Okay, so cells that are in one area that are supposed to reach another area and that don't make it there. And so you will come across that when you do pediatrics. Okay, so pretty much all the neurons that you will ever possess are generated